Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Space Commerce Entrepreneurial interview. I am Kelli Kedis Ogborn, and I am the Vice President of Space Commerce and Entrepreneurship here at the Space Foundation. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Leo Benkel, who is the founder of PURE LAMBDA. Leo provides solutions to entrepreneurs on how to overcome their product development challenges, leveraging his 10 years of experience in Silicon Valley. Leo first discovered his passion for science and technology during his childhood in France and began writing code at a very early age. This led him to a varied career in Silicon Valley with experiences in early stage startups, acquisitions, and high-scale growth. Leo possesses deep technical knowledge that includes development, programming, artificial intelligence, data science, and engineering at large. He is extremely active in the global technology community, developing open source libraries and managing online communities in education. To give back, he loves teaching, which he pursues through various speaking engagements worldwide. Welcome, Leo. I am really looking forward to our conversation today, and I'm so happy you're able to join us.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here too. Thank you, Kelli.
Welcome. So I want to start off just, giving our viewers a bit of understanding about where you came from. Throughout your career, you've had your hands in a lot of different aspects within innovation, from the actual tech development side to business creation. And so can you tell us a little bit more about PURE LAMBDA, your company, and really what your mission and goals are?
Yeah. So you described my background very well, and I think there's a little more details to add. Like, I got a master in France, and even then I specialized in research and development. So even at school, I knew I wanted to focus on doing something new. Even when I was a kid, I was always asking, like, what is that? What is that? What is that? Always learning and being passionate about what I don't know yet. And when I was in the United States, I got a chance to work in Silicon Valley, where the future is manufactured. Like, really, you get all the newest apps, all the newest product, and it's very thrilling to be there. And I was able to witness how people do it, how all of that is manufactured, how do they make it work. And I worked in various roles for various company size, startups and unicorns, and I was part of acquisition process. And I've seen how every opportunity is seized to make something new and disrupt the market. My company was maturing in my head as I discovered that I really enjoy solving processes. At first, I knew I liked to write code, but I felt like I had a gift for it, and it was easy, and so I dived into this industry. But as I was developing my career, I realized that what I like the most is solving processes and transformation from point A to point B. And I realized that I can apply this methodology and these techniques to broader industries than just writing code. And I realized that I can also mentor people and help them see their life as a series of processes like I do, and help them optimize their process. And so when I founded PURE LAMBDA, it was really a way to be able to do what I love the most, which is solving puzzles and challenges. And so with PURE LAMBDA, I help entrepreneurs solve their product development challenges using my software skills and my people skills. I am also an investor, so I'm able to help non-technical founder be a little bit more technical, or at least understand what engineers expect from their job, and help them manage and turn their vision into something that engineer can make, and help the operation and the management. And I also help technical founder because I'm an investor, so I know how investors think. I help technical founder stop talking too much about how it works and why it works and why they made it happen. Like, tell the story to the investors so that they can understand where you come from rather than how it works. Because I've seen a lot of technical founders diving into the technical, and I'm very excited to hear about it, but investors might not. We got an article recently in the main Silicon Luxembourg newspaper, which called me the doctor of startup. And I think it's very accurate, because the way I work is hourly based. You book a consultation and we work together on solving your challenges to get to the next step. And you leave the office with a prescription of recommendation of what to do next.
I definitely think you need business cards with that name printed, because that's very cool. I also really enjoy the background and how you kind of comprehensively put it together, because, as you know, the innovation space is definitely not linear and it's not black and white. And so you're able to pull from these different pieces of your background and realize that there's this, like you said, prescriptive way to help people, but it's not a one size fits all. So you really meet them where they're at, which is wonderful. Was there a particular moment in your career that led you to create the company? So you said that, the idea had been sort of maturing in your mind, but was there this point where you're like, yes, I'm going to strike out on my own and create Pure Lambda?
Well, I've always had big plans with challenge, with milestone and checkpoint. Like when I was, I don't know, maybe 12 years old, I was like, I know I want to be an engineer. And so then I went to school for it and everything. And when I went to San Francisco, I already knew I would not, live there forever. And I knew that at some point I would like to leave. I didn't know when, but I had this checkpoint at some point to go back to Europe, to be able to bring everything I've learned back to my home continent, per se. And so my original plan was to travel the world and then settle somewhere like in Europe. I even wanted to buy an RV at some point and just really explore. Like it's part of the innovation in my brain. It's like knowing new things, being able to expose to new cultures. But what happened 2 years ago is that COVID hit, and so my plan that was for the next 6 years got shifted, and I was like, okay, I think I'll move now. At this point, I also starting not enjoying San Francisco as much as I used to, and with this opportunity, because I take everything as opportunity. So COVID became an opportunity to switch things around. So I decided to move to Luxembourg and create the company at the same time.
That's a lot of shifting and changing at one time.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You sort of have to do that big upheaval and then push forward to just break down all the walls. So that actually, I loved your answer because it led me right into my next question. So we all know that, successful businesses and entrepreneurs, it really requires communities to grow and thrive and to be able to succeed. And can you talk a little bit about some of your partners or supporters along the way and how they helped you?
And every company I work for, the management and the leadership was always very helpful. One of the first person I worked with has been my mentor in finance and investment for the last 10 years. I got someone that helped me grow as an engineer. I got someone that helped me grow as an investor. I got some relationships that helped me understand more how people work and how to be closer to them. I love to learn, and so whenever I encounter someone, there's always something interesting to learn from, good connections, and then give back. I manage this community of more than 300 engineers and help them with Scala programming language and functional programming, which I'm passionate about.
I really loved the point you made about that there's so many things that you can learn from this diverse set of people, because I find that a lot of times in industries, people have these very black and white ideas of, this person can help me because they can fund my product. This person can help me because of X. But I always find that these like brilliant ideas come about when I'm talking to someone that's not even related in the same industry.
Yeah. The serendipity.
Yes, because then you realize you're like, oh, that's a really interesting process. Doesn't necessarily apply, but I can make it apply because it just gets you thinking in more creative ways. And it seems that you apply that kind of practice.
I absolutely love cross-industry knowledge transfer. And sometimes I'm very frustrated when I watch a documentary and I listen about, I don't know, something biology. And I'm like, I watched a documentary yesterday about chemistry and they solved this problem. Go talk to them.
I think it's such an important lesson. And whenever I talk to young entrepreneurs or, mentor people, I always encourage them to go to networking events outside of their industry, just to see like how the conversations flow and get these cross-pollination type ideas. Because I always find that those moments of brilliance come from like walking down the street, right? It's when your mind is more open and susceptible.
One of the funniest events I went to was hosted by a big bank in San Francisco on the last floor.
Yeah.
And I entered with one of my coworkers, boss technical person, and we were expecting a talk about AI and very advanced topics. And we get there, everybody's in suits. There is Kobe beef sliders, and there's an author talking about AI, but from the business point of view, like, oh, is that the wrong date? So we went the week after, and everybody was like hoodies, pizza and beers. It was a completely different atmosphere. It was really fun to compare the two events because they were the same location on the same topics, but one was for business people and one was from engineers. It was really fun to see the contrast.
And it's also fun when then those worlds are put in the same networking room.
Absolutely.
And to see just the distinction between the way that people behave and their clothing and like everything else.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that. We talked a bit about your journey, and we talked a little bit about the people that allowed you to get to where you are, helped you. And, I think anybody who's been an entrepreneur, anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur understands that while it's an extremely exciting path, it's also not linear, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious that throughout your journey, what have been some of the biggest challenges and some of your biggest successes that you've come about?
My recent biggest challenge was the move across the Atlantic while in the middle of the pandemic, while finding an apartment, while funding the company. But I used everything I knew. I used my management skills to design my move. I created like a task board with all my tasks with a dependency between them. I created a Gantt diagram with a calendar and a deadline, which was my date to move. And then I organized everything. So I split up this big challenge into tiny little actionable tasks that I could do every day. And it worked. I moved, I got an apartment, and I created my company. I had more than 150 tasks to do, closing bank account, moving asset over. It was crazy, but it worked.
We're now going to take a short break for some insight on what's happening at Space Foundation.
Space Foundation is a nonprofit advocate organization offering gateways to information, education, and collaboration for space exploration and space-inspired industries that drive the global space ecosystem. Space Foundation, advocating for innovation, bettering life on Earth.
Welcome back to our entrepreneurial interview with Leo Benkel. Leo, we were talking about, challenges and opportunities being an entrepreneur. And now I really want to kind of jump into the space topic because, space is a rapidly evolving industry, and a lot of people that aren't intimately involved in it are somewhat challenged to figure out how to even think about it, right? Because there's just so much happening. So I am curious, what gets you excited about it?
Yeah, so there's so many things happening right now, like you said, and for me it's kind of fun because I'm not entirely completely involved just with the space industry because I focus on software, and of course it's used in the space industry, but what I do is really industry agnostic, but I have a very deep passion about space. So every time there is someone coming from the space industry, I'm super excited. And I'm very lucky to be in Luxembourg because of everything that's happening. But I think there's two big trends right now that we can talk about. The first one is the privatization of the sector that has been happening those last years. And I think that's really like, we used to have, the US-Russian space race, but now it's kind of like the Bezos-Musk space race. So it's kind of fun to watch and who was the biggest one. But the other fun trend as well is the manufacturing in space. Instead of sending assets from Earth, is manufacturing directly up there. And I think that will be a major leap in our capacity.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we talk a lot about at the Space Foundation, especially within space commerce, is really driving home this concept that space is a place for everyone and every skill set. And especially as space evolves to really fill this collective wish we have for the space, there's all these space adjacent markets that are going to become relevant if they're not already.
Oh, yeah.
People tend to realize that they're already, or actually rather they don't realize that they're already part of the space industry, whether they can root themselves in it yet.
Yeah.
So I am curious, what space trends? So you talked about space manufacturing, but what trends do you see becoming more relevant or growing really in the years to come?
Yeah. Well, I think the manufacturing in space is critical for the rest of everything. It will be like the key component. But that involves several parts, right? There is the power, there is the 3D printing industry, there is thrusters, there is how do you maintain this, and that will translate to application done on Earth. Because imagine if you have a factory that's completely autonomous that can operate in low gravity around the planet, you can have a completely autonomous factory done on Earth as well. So that will improve manufacturing in every sectors. All of the manufacturing also require resources. So I love the concept of asteroid mining. It's like, I'm always been passionate about sci-fi, and being in Luxembourg, where it's one of the few countries that have legalized or put a legal framework around asteroid mining. It's amazing to see everything that's happening here. We have a company here in Luxembourg that is able to 3D print solar panels using moon dust, but they transfer this knowledge down on Earth because now they can 3D print using the silicate from the sand in the Sahara as well. So they'll be able to like print out solar panel all around the desert and bring energy and renewable energy here on Earth as well. So it's really exciting to see how technology go back and forth between the two environments. And recently we saw like 3D printings happening in space, and there's automation and AI and robotic. Like it's awesome.
That's cool. I actually didn't realize that Luxembourg had a framework for asteroid mining. So what is that
It
actually?
was the second country after the United States to set it up.
Interesting. So what does it cover? Does it cover, regulation, tech development to get there? Like what kind of things are in it?
Yeah, they have like a big space plan. There is a big accelerator program called Fit for Start, which is the STAR accelerator program, and they have an entire side of it dedicated to space. They also have the Technoport, which is a huge industrial incubator of Luxembourg, it's really beautiful to visit because it is merged within the old building related to the steel industry back from decades ago. So you have the mix of new and old building all together, and it's gorgeous. And there's this huge warehouse for startups that wants to manufacture hardware for space. And just recently, there was an article announcing a brand new space incubator. I think there's more than 70 space-focused companies in Luxembourg, and it's really exciting. And they all work together, right? One of them work on the thrusters, one of them works on the power generation, one of them works on the mining. So they all like interlace to make this ecosystem thrive. And Luxembourg is also one of the oldest. Is the home of one of the oldest satellite company. SES is based in Luxembourg.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and so these small countries like take bets on stuff that nobody else does. So they were the first one to be like, satellite sounds fun, let's do it.
A lot of times too, those smaller countries are able to be more agile because
it's like startups versus corporates, right?
Well, and it's interesting that you touched upon the collaborative nature of it, because I truly think that in order to be successful in a lot of these far-reaching endeavors, space is both collaborative and competitive by design. It needs to be, because the competition needs to be there to push these companies and countries actually to progress their space programs and to want to succeed. But it really is strength in numbers, because you mentioned, energy storage and energy solutions. I mean, when people think about asteroid mining and moon mining and these Mars colonies and all these things that like we all know as humanity we want, you still have to crack the code about very practical things like, okay, well, how do you power things in space? You're not going to have outlets. How do you get power up there? Because batteries can drain because of extreme, temperatures and others. And so I love that you touched upon this collaborative nature, because in order for one to succeed, another has to have this, systems approach.
And I'm a big believer into like normalization of things. Like when you talk about outlet, we're gonna have to design new norms that works in space. And it's very similar to how the software industry works, because we have all those open source tools that everybody use and build upon, so we can all grow together as an industry. And it's all built like abstraction layer on top of abstraction layer to have like more solid frameworks. And we're building the same thing in the space industry with like platforms and CubeSats and all those dimensions that are normalized so people can build upon.
Oh yeah. Well, and I always talk about a lot about the art of the possible, like figuring out where your baseline is, what you're able to achieve, and having all this sort of brain trust in one area. It's nice because you can say, okay, well, that technology is really not going to be realized for 5 to 7 years. So that might actually affect my business timeline in terms of what I'm actually trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
and
great.
You have to have those like solid foundation where you can build more innovation on top, right? It's like this big pyramid and castles that we're building all together.
Absolutely. Switching gears slightly, and I think this also, bleeds into the space conversation we're having, but you have a big passion for teaching and paying it forward, and especially because you've seen everything from working large companies, small companies, being in the trenches, being at the top. Are there any particular lessons learned that really stand out to you that you've kind of gathered along the way?
Yeah, one big thing for me is like be ambitious. If you aim for the moon, you might as well, reach the sky. Those things like disrupt the people that are always, oh, this is what we always do. Like we have always done it that way. There is no need for doing different. But I try to always try to think in terms of first principle, right? It's like, what do I want to achieve, and what is the most efficient way to achieve it, regardless of what other people are doing. And often you realize that it's not what other people are doing because of legacy stuff, because of traditions or history.
Yeah.
And like, hold on, why are we doing it that way? And the answer is like, I don't know. We've never asked the questions. That's what we've always done. So
Yeah.
try to disrupt those type of things.
I mean, you touched on two really important things. I remember back when I had my consulting companies, somebody once told me that it's a very selfish position to think that everyone is constantly thinking and judging you, because it can be really hard to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And when you I mean, I'm sure that you've experienced this, but you know, when you push publish on your website, or when you push things out, it's like you think that people are going to come in with a fine tooth comb and scrutinize. They don't, because they're just going to take the genesis of what you're doing. But also,
they also don't have they haven't went through all the process of questioning that you had to. So they just see the final product and they see it without anything around it, and it's very different than when you have this history of like, oh, it could have been this, it could have been that. They don't know what it could have been. They just know what it is.
Exactly. Well, and also the fact that I think is extremely important that you said is that you know, not everyone is going to be a supporter. Not everyone is going to understand what you're doing. Do you have any suggestions, or actually rather examples of like times that you've been told no, or kind of like that perseverance piece that needs to live in an entrepreneur? Because you get told no more than you get told yes. But the yes opportunities are the ones that really drive you forward.
Yeah, for me, maybe, you know, I'm a little schizophrenic, but I like to split myself into three parts. There is a present me, you know, like the one you're seeing right now. But there's a past me that is my manager. He's the one that told me to do this meeting right now, right? And I think the past me is the one that is most risk-taking, because it's like saying yes to everything just to put myself out there. And the future self is the person you want to help, right? It's like, okay, it's better if you do that, so you're gonna do it. But overall, you know, life is a quest, you know, to know ourselves and to know what we want, and then we need to know how to get there, and all of that, you know, is like creating a path for yourself. And I think if you know where you're going, or like what's your goal, is much faster to navigate the maze of the foggy future.
What about advocacy and awareness within innovation? You know, it seems that that's a really ingrained theme in a lot of what you do work-wise. And can you touch a little bit about the importance of that?
Yeah, so I think there's a big difference between like the way we internalize innovation, because you can think of it as an expense. It's like, look at this money disappearing. But I think of it more as an investment, right? We spend time today, we spend money today, so that in the future we are more efficient.
Yeah.
And it's hard to measure those investment, because you don't have, you know, a parallel universe where you would not have done it. What would have happened? Right? So it's sometimes hard to talk about it, or like to convince people about it. Like when you look at the fusion reactors that we are designing here on Earth with ITER in France and Tokamak in the UK, it's like it's been billions of dollars and like many people hours to work on it, but so far we have not seen the results yet. But I know that when it happens, it will be amazing, right? We'll have unlimited free energy forever, right? But it's kind of like face a little bit, right? You have to believe. And so I think if you don't know about innovation and you're afraid of it, I think one good way to get about it is to start by incremental change rather than a gigantic new disruptive idea like fusion reactors, right? And it can also be in your daily life, right? It's like, maybe I'll try a new meal, or maybe I'll go to this restaurant I've never been to, or like, that's also innovation. It's like exploring outside of the boundary of the known.
Absolutely. No, that's such an important piece, because there was this concept I read about a couple years ago that they couch it as saying Maya, so it's most advanced yet acceptable. And it talks about people, and it's actually a concept that's used very heavily in marketing. So it's like you want to do something that's innovative enough but feels familiar to people so they don't totally push it aside.
Yeah.
And you're right, because with all this automation and change, and especially with older generations, they don't want to necessarily live in a society that looks completely different than how they
Yeah.
grew up. But there are small things now, like my 73-year-old father is sending Bitmojis and other things where it's like,
Yeah.
if you would have asked him 5 years ago, he'd be like, I don't know what that is. But now it's the seamless part, and then you slowly integrate them into it.
Mm-hmm. There's also people, that are afraid of losing their job, which makes sense, right? But those transitions have happened many times in the past, right? We don't have as many miners. We don't have as many, like there used to be a job where someone will knock at your window to wake you up, but those jobs don't exist anymore. And, people have survived, right? We, as humanity, we were able to move away from this job, and we're still there.
Yeah.
So there are jobs, that will disappear, and that's fine because new jobs are being created and there is new things to do.
So how do you think you overcome that? Is it bringing people into the conversation early and often?
Yes, and also offering education, right? Because you don't want to let people in the dust. You want to allow them to be retrained, reskilled. That's why I manage this community online. A lot of people come from switch of career, right? They were, I don't know, maybe a chef working in a restaurant and COVID hit, and they're like, I took a boot camp and now I write code.
Yeah, that's very true.
And it's amazing to have those coworkers when you work at a company with people that come from other industry, because you have so much more diversity in finding problem and solution.
Absolutely. That concept of reskilling and upskilling is critical. And, we talked about it earlier about these space adjacent skill sets and these space adjacent industries and markets. And I think more and more, as space is becoming more relevant and people are realizing that it's not just rockets and satellites and these big ticket items, which are critical. I mean, those are like the defining, images of the space industry, but there really is a place for everyone. And I always find it really interesting when you realize that upskilling piece and you have that aha moment of people where they're like, oh, I actually can, I'm a seamstress, and when space tourism becomes a reality, they're going to need, really special spacesuits that are both aesthetically pleasing, because that kind of goes with the motif, but also
they're going to be a space fashion.
But also efficient. If you think about when space tourism becomes a reality, everyday citizens are going to be going up, and so you're not necessarily going to meet like the rigorous health standards that astronauts have to go through, and that takes a very particular type of skill. So my last question for you is kind of my favorite one, because it's open-ended, but is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience, or that you haven't said, or anything that's like, really burning in your mind?
I don't know, just be yourself. And if you have any product development challenges, reach out.
That's great. Yeah, we've been running the ticker on Pure Lambda under this, and so definitely people know how to reach you. And I'm
also super available on LinkedIn. You can search for my name. There's also tons of YouTube videos about other talks I gave. So I'm easy to find.
You are actually. You're very responsive too, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of writing an article about how to be more productive with your mailbox, so people are more productive all around.
Please send that when you're done.
Yeah, it's still in the oven. It's not ready yet.
That's fair. Whenever it's fully cooked. Yeah. Well, that concludes today's discussion. And Leo, I really want to thank you for sharing your passion and insights with us. I know that
Thank you, Kelly.
Definitely learned a lot. And it's sort of rare when I learn other productivity hacks from people. So I'm blessed that I was able to learn that from you. And I'm going to try to adopt that into my...
We can do another talk just on productivity.
We have to. It's like my favorite topic. I hope that you, the viewers, learn something as well. And if you're interested in learning more about our space commerce programs or watching other entrepreneurial webinars, please go to our website, spacefoundation.org, and check out our space commerce series. We really look forward to seeing you again, and we want you to remember that there's a place for everyone in the new global space ecosystem.